Do you struggle to understand native speakers? Either when you're watching videos on YouTube and you still can't quite catch what they're saying, or when you're trying to have a conversation and you quickly feel lost or even overwhelmed. This is a recipe for giving up and missing out on a whole world of experiences through the language that you're learning. In this video, I'm going to be sharing a number of tactics that you can use in order to improve your understanding, to help get you fluent faster and to enjoy the language for the rest of your life. I've mentioned a lot of these tips in my newsletter recently and I got a lot of positive feedback, so I hope they help you too. So first of all, the main problem clearly is words. If you don't know enough words, you're going to massively struggle, obviously. So you've got a few options here. A popular one is just smash through a ton of flashcards of the most used words. That's absolutely fine if you've got the attention span and you've already got the habit to do something every day. But a lot of people hate doing them. Worst case scenario, you burn out and then you're back to where you started. But that's not you. You're going to get fluent, my friend. How about this as an alternative? Find something that you want to watch, read, or listen to. It needs to have words in it you don't know, of course. It might be aimed at beginners. You might be an advanced learner. I'm not your uncle. You have to work out what's about the right level for you. Though if it's your first day, you might want to manage your expectations.
Yo creo que yo me habría llevado bien con Cleopatra. Y con Marco Antonio también, ¿no? Marco Antonio y Cleopatra al final eran novios, ¿no? Habíamos quedado que eran novios o no. Espérate, que se lo voy a preguntar a ChatGPT.
Let's say it's a YouTube video, ideally on a subject you're interested in. You can watch the whole thing through. If you don't understand something, you can use the subtitles and look up the words you don't know so that you understand enough of what's going on. Here you can use a plugin on Google Chrome like Language Reactor to translate the words right there. Bear in mind that being a video, you're also going to be picking up on stuff like body language and tone of voice. You don't have to understand everything and try and memorize every single word. You just need to know enough of what's going on. Then at some point, watch it again or even listen to the audio as you go about your chores. That's why YouTube Premium is probably one of the best investments for language learners, after a good set of headphones, of course. You can play the audio all the time without having to watch the video. Create a playlist of stuff that you want to learn from and just listen all the time. If you're doing something that's not too difficult and your brain has some capacity, you can listen again, naturally reminding yourself of the words that you've learned. I listen to a lot of stuff when I walk the dog, for example. There are YouTube videos that I've listened to the audio for countless times. Any of those words you've looked up or couldn't quite remember, you're going to hear again and again. If it's a subject you're interested in, you're far less likely to get bored. You don't have to understand everything 100%, but the repeated listening and even looking at words if you need it, you'll start to find the video much easier to understand. For a lot of videos, you might find that just repeated listening without looking at words is enough. That's pretty much what I've done with Spanish, and it works really well if it's at the right level for you. With exposure to enough content which you can understand most of, your brain will just fill in the blanks. By the way, listening while you sleep isn't a thing. I wish it were too, but that's life. So another excellent way to make the most of your language learning time is through using the sponsor of this video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online platform with hundreds of courses available to learn new skills. Skillshare's got courses for learners of a number of different languages if you're a complete beginner. They've got classes for learners of Spanish, French, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Arabic, there's more I'm sure. Have a look and see if there's something that takes your fancy. But what I really like is that there are courses about stuff in different languages. Rather than learning about the language, you can learn through the language. I was watching content about video production in Spanish and there are specific words related to my interest, and because I'm seeing them in really memorable context, I'm so much more likely to remember them. You probably have your own interests that don't relate to cinematography. If you see the search results, add a filter and you can see results only in the languages that you're learning. They have got content in German, in Spanish, French, Portuguese, and English. You can build your language skills as you learn new stuff like design, photography, self-development, etc. Yes, if you're doing it through a language you're learning, you might not be 100% yet, and you might have to look up words here or there or go a little slower. But the desire to learn a new skill could be the motivation you need to keep going. The first 500 people who use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so get started today. Thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Before we get into a real game changer, something else which I think is super overlooked is this. Note the difference. I don't know. I don't know. When we pronounce words in a sentence compared with on their own, the sounds can change and they often merge together. This is imaginatively named connected speech. When you started learning a language, did it all just sound like noise? first of all. Connected speech is completely natural, but without enough experience listening to native speakers, we'll probably struggle to hear the difference in these sounds. Sometimes sounds are added, sometimes sounds are lost, and sometimes it's just that they change. So to deal with this, I'm not going to suggest that you do some special technique or waste any time of your day worrying about it. The great thing these days is that there's literally so much content that you can usually find language learning content in pretty much every language, and as you increase the difficulty of what you're listening to, naturally you'll get accustomed to this as the speakers talk in a more natural way. So start easy and then build it up from there. One thing I'll say here that really helped me with Spanish is, if it's possible, it might make sense to focus on one particular accent first of all. So my accent is completely different from an American accent, for example.
Hey, Tony, I'm walking here.
And so if you're an English learner switching between the two, you'd have to get your ear accustomed to two types of accent, which might be tricky first of all. Find a creator you like and absolutely binge their content. As you get accustomed to one accent and the sounds associated with it, your language level will increase over time. So when you hear another accent of your target language, you're already going to be starting at a higher level and therefore have a greater chance of understanding what the other person's saying.
Hey, Tony, use your eyes, I'm walking here.
It's not always going to be possible to choose, but it could make your life easier by sticking to one resource or creator for now. So here's the thing that could be a real game changer for you. You never stop learning a language, even your native language. If I strolled down to my local university and I sat in the lecture hall for, let's say, brain surgery, do they teach that at uni? Anyway, there would not only be words, but also concepts in there that I've never heard before, and that's in my native language. Knowing that, we can use it to our advantage. Binging videos or content on one particular topic at a time will help you become accustomed to all of the vocabulary specific to that topic that eventually you might want to go and talk about. This will, of course, at the same time be full of words and sentence structures that will apply to the rest of the language. Also, knowing about a subject is part of the cheat code in understanding what you're listening to. So for example, I recently listened to Dune, the audiobook, in Spanish, and because I know the story, I was able to follow along because I had context for what I was hearing. Had I not known the story, my level of comprehension probably would have been lower, and there could have been times where I struggled. You can use your existing knowledge as leverage in learning a language. Another way to apply this is if you're having conversation classes. Talking about topics that you already know about gives you a chance to speak with a greater degree of fluency. This is why I prefer to pay tutors over, say, a free language exchange. You can have an idea about what you want to talk about beforehand, and if you're paying a tutor, then you get to say, I want to talk about this today. That way you get to try and use any of the new words you've heard before in whatever you've been watching or listening to recently. You could even write a few of them down in order to try and drop them into conversation and get them into your active vocabulary. The more you get exposed to one topic and talk about it, the more comfortable you'll feel with the language. When you're ready, just find something else that interests you and binge content on that next. Each time your overall level in a language will improve, getting you closer to fluency. So we don't live in the 90s, and we've got a wider array of tools at our disposal to help us with certain problems these days. So this trick relates to listening to or watching content. You can't do this one with your italki tutor. Generally speaking these days, most things will have a way to adjust the speed of the speech. YouTube is perfect because that's a custom speed setting. If you slow down stuff too much, everyone just sounds like they're drunk. But by slowing things down to about 80 or 90%, it still sounds natural, but gives you more of a chance to hear the distinct sounds. Annoyingly, on some things, you might have fewer options. On my podcast app, I can only slow things down to 75%, which makes people sound a little bit weird, but you do get used to it. It's not completely awful if you need it. You'll notice the connected speech here as well, where the space where words merge together gets stretched out a little bit more. Whilst we're talking techie things, sound quality makes such a massive difference. If you're listening to a professional podcast compared with a random YouTube video with lots of noise in the background, your ability to hear the sound is going to be completely different. If I can, I aim to focus on content with good audio just to give me a head start. The same goes for using headphones that are comfortable and sound great. And I know it sounds a bit weird, but sometimes I try and find content with a voice that I like. You won't always get a choice, but if the speaker has a voice which for whatever reason you find appealing, then you've got an extra incentive to stick with it and listen to more of it. I would play you the narration for Dune, but I'll probably get hit with a copyright strike. Needless to say, That chap had a lovely voice. I can't emphasize enough how important this next point is. One thing that I totally misunderstood when I had less experience in language learning was this. We use the word understand like it's a binary thing, just either you do understand or you don't. But the way it works is as you improve, over time your ability to understand gets better, but you won't always understand 100% of the time. You might get the general gist, but get thrown off by a new word. But from the intonation or the way that they said it, you get the feeling that they're not happy about whatever the situation is, and so the word must have some kind of bad connotation.
Hey, Tony, can you just give me a coffee, eh? Why is everyone called Tony? Are you Tony? Am I Tony?
For example, and the more experience you get, the more comfortable you get with not understanding everything 100%. What's more, this is essential if you want to improve. Let's say you find some beginner material that is very simple and you understand all of the words. You might feel comfortable, probably a bit bored, but in reality, you're probably not improving if you're beyond your first few lessons. So in fact, we need this state where we don't understand everything. That's how we know that there are new words or structures to learn. Content we don't completely understand is going to be rich with new stuff. Now, obviously, if it's completely overwhelming, just tone it down a bit and find some easy content for now, which is closer to your level before you start to increase that difficulty over time. You will get there. Now, after a while, you'll get a sense of how you like to learn. And so that might mean adding some words to flashcards, noting a word down to look up later, or just listening over and over again until it becomes clearer. Either way, we need this state of ambiguity, so don't shy away from it. Now, one crucial thing is that the way you learn a language can change over time so that it fits in with your lifestyle. Check out this video here to find out what happened to me and what I did to stay consistent with my learning.